Hey, almost didn't see me there, did you? What's up? So today I got a really cool project for you. It's a drawing app, and I think it is originally how Da Vinci drew the Mona Lisa. I think you can kind of see it on my right here. It might be a bit hard to see, with the lighting, but it is a drawing app. So I say we jump right into the PC, and let me show you exactly what we're gonna build, how we're gonna build it, and how it's gonna help you in your coding journey. Let's get right into it. Okay, so here we are in the code, and this is the project I've already done, and I've already started the server. So let me show you what this looks like as a final project. We just want to zoom out a bit and look at this. So you have a little hex style on the left here, a clear board, and by default the black color is selected, and then you can just start drawing. Like, how cool is that? You can draw like the Mona Lisa or whatever. You can choose a different color for here, and then you can choose like a yellow color for the hair, so we can put hair up here. And I guess you can verify that I have 3 art PhDs, and this is pretty much the project we're gonna build. So how cool is that? A fully functional canvas board that you can draw on, a smooth drawing, by the way. This looks really cool, and then you can just clear the board whenever you're done. And you can really expand on this project as well, right? There's like whole games that are based on this idea. Now they have a WebSockets implementation, which would be a great way to go on with this project if you want to continue building yourself. Like, there are whole games based on this. I mean, look at this. Like, they're literally drawing the same thing as here. Like, this looks a bit better. And then, this is a pretty simple game that is very similar to the concept we have right here. So this is the project I've already completely coded out. Now, I'm not gonna show you that. We're gonna build it together. So that's way cooler. So let's go into the desktop, and I'm gonna create a new next app for this. So npx create next app at latest -- experimental app. Now what this is gonna do is initialize a NextJS 13 project with the new app folder. Now, don't worry, if you've never worked with NextJS, if you've only ever worked with React, that is no problem at all. We are not going to be using any Next specific features in this one, so you can follow along just fine in completely normal React. So let's call this Canvas. Let's just call it Canvas. We want to use TypeScript, hell yeah, and we want the ESLint, and now that's going to set up our TypeScript project for us. We're going to have those 3 features, so the a little color dial. Now, if you want to work on this project, maybe put it in your portfolio. I would definitely recommend working on the styling. Now, the styling is never a big part of my videos. I would use Tailwind for it, or you can have more functionality like a WebSockets implementation, as you saw in the game I've shown you. That would be a good idea, and maybe in a future project we'll even work on that together. So for now, I'll pull up the current server that is running, clear that, and stop the server just so we can get into it together. So let's open this in VS Code, the folder we just created. That's going to open here on my left. And now we have a brand new Next.js project. I've got the guidelines here on the left. So if I ever look to the left, that is where the project where I've already coded this out is open. And I propose we just get started right away. So there are 2 things that we need in building this. We want our page, so where we're gonna display the final canvas, because we're gonna be doing this with an HTML canvas element, and we can already start the server and go to the local host. Now there's probably gonna be nothing for now, as there shouldn't be anything. Okay, well, there's the standard Next.js stuff, but that is totally fine. Okay, so let's initialize a functional component here, a TypeScript component. I'm doing this with a shortcut. I've shown you how to do that in a previous video. I can link it in the description if you're wondering. And now let's get into the nitty-gritty stuff. So the first thing we want is probably the HTML canvas that we're going to use to draw on. Now that canvas... Oh, and actually, let me make the code larger for you. That's going to be a bit hard to see. Now, the canvas is going to be self-closing, and it's going to take a couple of, props. So first, we want to define the width. In the example you just saw, I set it to 750. Then we want the height. That's also going to be 750, just so it's a nice square shape. And then we can give it a class name. Let's give it a class name of border dash black and rounded dash medium. Now that's not gonna do anything yet, right? If we reload the page, nothing is gonna happen. Why is nothing happening? Well, because we haven't installed Tailwind. So let's go to Tailwind NextJS. Now, if you're following along in React, there's the same exact thing for React, for create React app. You're just gonna follow these guidelines right here. In my case, that's gonna be Next.js. We can literally just copy the commands, as easy as that, go into our project, paste the npm commands, and that's gonna do all the lifting for us. And now we just need to paste this into our Tailwind config. So let's go in here, paste those contents. As you can see right here, the app folder is addressed. So they actually changed it in the Tailwind documentation. So that is fixed. Because it wasn't before when Next.js first launched, like the 13 version, but now it is. And now we can just save our globals.css, and that should be making our Tailwind integration work. Well, if we restarted the server. So yarn dev, or in the case of React, that would be yarn start or npm run start. And now if we reload the page, it's gonna load quite a long time, but there is our canvas. Great. We can give this div a width of screen, and we can give it a height of screen. So that just means it will take up all the width and height of the screen. Give it a background of white, flex, justify, center, and item center, just so the canvas is in the middle of the screen. That's exactly where we want it. Okay, great. Now the first step we're gonna take is making a custom hook for this. And just for easier folder management, I'm gonna create a folder called hooks. And in that folder, we're gonna have a hook called useDraw.ts. Now there are other tutorials that show you how to do like a drawing component in React, but they don't use TypeScript and they use outdated React versions. And you're gonna learn all the stuff in this video. Okay, so from this useDraw, we're gonna export the constant useDraw, so the custom hook, which is just gonna be a function. And in here we can now have the state and use effect and all the hooks that we are used to from React, because we are having a custom hook. Now let me quickly disable GitHub Copilot, we won't need it. And okay, what do we want in this use effect? So when hovering over this canvas, first off, we want a drawing effect, right? How do we achieve that? Okay, so we want to have a use effect in here. So that means whenever this hook is called, the use effect will be running with an empty dependency array. So just once when the component renders. And then inside of this use effect, as you may expect, we are going to attach a event listener to the window, or we can actually not do that and attach the event listener directly to the canvas element, because we don't really need to worry about if the mouse is moving anywhere else than the canvas, right? So we can just attach it to the canvas directly. Now, where do we get the ref? Well, we can create it in here and then pass it to the client through the return. So, I mean, we're still on the client, but we're going to pass it to the page on the return. So what we can say right here is use ref. We're going to use the snippet, and let's call it the canvas ref, because it's going to be this canvas element right here. So we're going to import use ref. That use ref by default is going to be null. And if you're working with TypeScript, the type is going to be HTML canvas element. Now, how do I know that? I think you can probably hover over here, and here you can see the HTML canvas element, or this would be the HTML div element. That's how you get the according types. Now this canvas ref won't do anything. We're also going to want to return that to the page. And now to receive it in the page, we're going to say const, and then worry about the destruction later, is going to equal useDraw and invoke that function. So invoke this hook. That way we can get access to the return values, and we get canvas ref. And on the canvas, we can just say ref is equal to canvas ref. Nice. Okay, now that we've got the ref to our canvas, let's start working inside of the use effect. So because we have the ref, we can actually say something along the lines of, actually let's comment this. So add event listeners, just for better practice, you know. And then we can say window.add event listener, or actually no, we didn't want to attach it to the window. we wanted to attach it to the canvas ref.current. And now, okay, this object is possibly null, and what we can do for this is just add a question mark. So if this exists, then we're going to add an event listener to it, and this event listener is going to be a mouse move. So there's a event listener for the mouse move, and if this happens, we're going to want that handled. So the handler is going to run right here. This is the function we're going to call. Now this handler does need one parameter or argument, really important, and that argument, well, what type is that? If you're following along TypeScript, one tip to get the type is just have the E right here, so the event, and then you can get the type directly from here. So that's a really handy trick. And then afterwards we can remove the E, because this event will automatically be passed if we're calling this function. Okay, and inside of this handler, for now, we want, okay, so what do we want inside this handler? So on the mouse move, the event is going to contain the coordinates, right? We're going to have E dot, I think it's, what is it, X? No, it was, hold on, I'm looking right here. So we are receiving the E in the handler, and then we want to compute the point in the canvas. Okay, so it's E dot client X and client Y. That's how we get the coordinates. So client X and client Y will get passed to the handler. And okay, these will be absolute though. So we can log them out if you want. So that's going to make it a bit more clear. Let's say X E dot client X and Y E dot client Y. And let's see what happens. And also we're going to want to return this exact thing to clean up the event listeners. Just so we don't get any memory leaks. So this is also very important. Remove event listeners or clean up, whatever you want to call it. Save this. And now whenever we move the mouse, this should be run, but because we are using hooks, we need to declare this component as a client component, but that is only if you're following along in NextJS 13. If you're following in the older version of Next or React, you won't have that problem. That is just very specific to Next 13. And now we can see wherever the mouse is, we get the coordinates. But pay attention to where the mouse is right now. So it's at the top left, and we are getting the coordinates, but we want these coordinates to be relative to this canvas element right here and not relative to the page. And that is why we are going to compute the actual position in the next step. So we get the client X and client Y. Now we want a function that lets us compute point in canvas. So it will make the coordinate relative to the canvas. We are going to get the mouse event as well that we're going to pass from the handler in a second. That is going to be a function. And then inside of this function, the canvas, we can assign it to the canvas ref.current. And now if that, if there is no canvas, so if this object right here doesn't exist, in that case, we're just going to return. Nothing is going to happen because in the following, we're going to assume that it exists. So the rectangle that we want to worry about, so the coordinates is canvas, and on that we get a function that is called getBoundingClientRect. So the rect is not gamer language for, you got rect, but that is for rectangle. And from that we can get the x, which is equal to the e.clientx minus the rectangle dot top, not top, but left. And then for the y value is equal to e.client, client y minus rectangle dot top. Dot top, not dash top. So the y value along this axis right here will be I think it's subtracted in English by this value, so we get the relative canvas position, and then we're gonna just return that as an object that is gonna be and my keyboard changed again, so that is gonna be the x and the y we're just going to return, and we want those coordinates up here in the handler. So const current point, so where the mouse currently is going to be equal to compute point in canvas, and we are just gonna pass the event that we get from the handler, because we get that in the mouse move right here, to this, and therefore calculate the X and Y value and pass those back to the handler so that we can work in the handler with them. Now in the next step, we want the context of the canvas. Now because it's a canvas, we can do that. We can say current, and if that current exists, so we have the optional question mark chaining right here, we're gonna say get context. And that context is gonna be 2D. So you have a WebGL, bitmap renderer, never used any of those. We want it 2D one. And now if that context doesn't exist, or there is no current point, because we're initializing this as null, right? So this could be null, and therefore we would want this guard closed, because in the following, we're going to assume that it exists by passing it to a callback. Now, what should happen when we get the mouse position? Well, that is the question. And in this solution on my left right here, what I've done is pass the callback to the hook. So in the page, we define what should happen, and in the hook, we just receive that. Now, I'm going to show you how that looks in practice. What you could also do is define what should happen in the hook, but that would take a bit of flexibility when wanting to change the behavior according to specific canvas elements in your project, because you've always got the same behavior defined in your hook. Now, okay, we're going to receive a function that is called onDraw up here in the hook. And that is going to contain 3 arguments. So the context, the current point, and the current point and the previous point. That is going to be of type draw. Now, what the hell is the type draw? We're going to create a file that is called types. And in that, we're going to create a typing definition file. And that is just going to allow us to have global access to these types. And I'm just going to copy paste the types right here from my left. So we don't have to type them out manually. That would just be a bit, unnecessary. And by the way, this will be in the GitHub repo, so you don't have to type them out yourself as well. You can just copy them from me. It's a very simple file. We just have the canvas rendering context to D for the context, the current point of type point, so X and Y, and the previous point, which is either a point or it's null. All right, and now that we've got the types, as we can see, the draw is no longer marked red here as it was before. So right now it's marked red, right now it's not. We don't even need to import it. And that draw function that we are going to receive is returning void. So nothing specific is going to be returned from this function, but we just expect it from the front end. Now in the front end, what should this function look like? Well, we can say a function, let's call it draw line, because that's what I call it in the demo project. It's gonna have a previous point, a current point, let's call it current point, and it's gonna have the context. And the reason I'm having an object notation in here, because we could also do it like this, but then the what is it called on English? The order in which we pass the arguments would actually matter, and if we've got the object notation, then it won't. Those are also going to be of type draw, and the reason I'm declaring this as a function and not a constant with an arrow function is so we can provide it in here and the useDraw, because if we did say this is a constant which is equal to this and then an arrow function, that way we would have to declare the constant before we can pass it in here as the argument. And that is why I'm declaring this as a function right here. Now, okay, inside of this function, we can do a couple of things. First, we would want to destructure the, let's call it current X, and Y is cur Y. And we can destructure that from current point. So we get the values in here. And then we want a couple of things here. So what I've done in the demo project is, I think for now it's more useful to have a constant color, which is equal to hashtag 000. It's equal to that. This is where the hex wheel that you saw in the demo would come in later. That's where we're gonna get this value from. And let's say const line width is equal to 5. Now, the reason we are working with a previous point and a current point is because if we were only working with a previous point, then the drawing would actually look very scuffed, because if you move your mouse very fast, then there would be a lot of space between the dots. And if we are working with a previous point and a current point, we can actually tell the canvas to connect those two, so the line we draw will always be smooth. And to determine which point we are going to start with, we're going to say let start point is equal to previous point if it exists. Now the previous point in here doesn't even exist yet, but we're going to create it in a second. And if there is no previous point, because we haven't drawn anything on the canvas yet, then we're going to start with where the current mouse cursor is. So if there is no previous point, wherever the mouse is, we're going to start drawing. I think that makes sense intuitively. So current point. And now we're going to say context, and on this context we can say begin path. And the next one we're going to say context dot line width, and the dot line width, and that is going to be what we defined up here. So we want our brush to be 5 pixels thick. We can mess with that later if that's too thin or too thick, and we can also have that dynamically done by the client. So we can have a little wheel that says how large do you want your brush to be, and then they can select it. So that would be another option. And then the stroke style, on the context we want to be the line, or actually we call it color, but I want it to be named line color. I think that's a bit more verbose. Let's call it line color. And then there is a function on this context that is called move to. Now this move to is really handy. So we're going to say the start point, wherever that is. So either the previous point or the current point if it exists, dot x. And then as the second one, we're going to say start point dot y. And if we hover over here, we can see what it expects. So it expects a number that is an x and a y value. And that is exactly what we're providing the move to. Now the context dot line to is going to connect our dots. So we can say the current x and the current y we want connected. And then we're going to say context dot stroke and just dot stroke. Seems like I was having a stroke while typing that, and then just invoke that function. Okay, and now we're going to say context dot fill style is equal to line color. So the one we've defined up here, which is going to be black for now, but we're going to implement the hex wheel, which is really easy, by the way. It's just an npm package, so there's nothing too special about that. Then we're going to say begin path, and then context dot arc. Now, if this seems like we're doing a lot of boilerplate, yes, but you're going to get why we're doing this in a second. And we're going to say the arc should be created from start point dot x to start point dot y. And now, okay, what are we passing now? The radius. So the radius right now will be 2. You can pretty much do whatever you want, but I'd recommend 2 for our example. Then the start angle will be 0, so no start angle. And then the end angle will be 2 times math.pi. So we get a full circle. And yeah. And now we're just going to say one last thing, context.fill. So that's going to just fill in the line. And then we are done with the actual draw line function. Now, if you didn't quite understand what we were doing, you can just try out deleting some things and see what that does. So that's one way I really like to learn. I just clone projects from GitHub. Then I sometimes remove code to see what exactly that part of code does. I think it would be very easy to do that in this example, just to dissect what exactly we're doing. And okay, that means we are pretty much done on the page. Honestly, it wasn't that much. The only thing we want to implement now is that we also get a function that handles the drawing from the canvas. So on the canvas, there's a function we can use that is called on mouse down. So whenever we press the mouse button, and we don't have anything for this yet, but we do want that, and that is going to come from this hook right here. So we're going to worry about that for now. So first off, I think it makes sense to get on with a previous point, because we haven't even done that yet. And the previous point is going to be a ref. So updating the previous point is not going to cause a re-render. as if we were using state. And that ref is gonna be either null, because that's what we're gonna initialize it as, or it's gonna be a point. And we get that point from the typings.d.ts, which is really convenient. And we're gonna initialize it as null, as I said. And that way we just get the full type safety. However, if you're working along in JavaScript, you don't need to worry about that at all. Okay, and now the only thing we also want to do is, well, not the only thing, but one of the things we still want to do is have a use state. And for some reason, I can't dynamically do that, like import it, but we can just say const, and then the array is equal to use state, and that use state is going to be false by default. And this just means, is the mouse pressed down or not, right? Because we don't want it to paint all the time, but only when we press down the mouse. And that is why we're going to say mouse down and set mouse down in the state up here. We can separate the state from the refs. And now the mouse down, we're going to just create a very quick function for that. Let's call it on mouse down, because that's just going to be conveniently named, because that's exactly what we're going to pass to the canvas. And that is just going to be a function. And whenever that function is run, we're going to set mouse down to true. And yeah, that's pretty much it. And to get that to the page, we're going to say on mouse down right here. And that way we can just destructure it on the page. Get it right here, and then use it back here in the canvas on mouse down. And that's a lot of the work done already. Now we can save all of those files and look at what happens. So right now, when we click the canvas, not much happens, but we are almost there. So, okay, what do we want to do now? I think it makes sense to first get the actual drawing to work. And now to do that, in the handler, we want to add one thing. So after the context or current point guard clause, we actually want to execute the function we have defined in the page. So this function defines how the lines will be drawn on the canvas, and we're passing that to use draw and receiving it up here, but we're not using it anywhere. So let's do it now. So because we have these guard clauses in place, we can expect that the context and the current point are present. And as you can see up here, we need both of them in the onDraw. So because we're using object notation, we're going to pass an object that is going to contain the context, the current point, and then also the prev point, which is going to be a prev point.current. Now, okay, and after doing that, it makes sense to assign the prev point.current the current point, because after executing the function once, the current point is going to be the previous point for the next point. That is essentially what we're doing right here. So if we weren't doing that, then the drawing wouldn't work properly. This is pretty much just like a loop. So each time the handler runs, we are drawing from the current point to the previous and then moving the current to the previous so the next points can be connected adequately. Okay, and as you can see right now, oh hell yeah, the drawing works. Now I'm not pressing my mouse though, so every time I'm in the canvas, it automatically starts drawing, and that is not really what we want. So a simple thing we can do is say if not mouse down, we can just return. And that should in theory work, but it doesn't because, well, I'm not too sure honestly. Well, okay, let's try to fix that. So right now, the canvas doesn't really do much. And I've got the solution here open on the left. And I think what makes sense to do is first off, implement a mouse up listener, because we also need to do that. Now we are not attaching that to the canvas ref, but to the window. Why are we attaching a mouse up window listener? Well, if we are drawing inside of the canvas, and then going outside of it with our mouse while the mouse is still pressed, and we would attach it to the canvas, then the mouse up wouldn't get triggered when we release our mouse outside of it. So it would still think the user's trying to draw, and then when we go back in, it will always keep drawing. That is something we don't want. So it makes sense to attach the listener to the window in this case. And then in the return, so for the cleanup, we still want to remove the, we want to remove the event listener, not add it. That is very important. And then we also want the window.remove event listener of the mouse up that we have up here. And then also the mouse up handler, which doesn't exist yet, which is going to be a very small function called mouse up handler that isn't going to receive anything. And the set mouse down is going to happen. So the mouse down is false. So when we release the button, the left mouse button, the event listener will call our mouse up handler, set the mouse down to false, and then also the previous point dot current we want to set to null. So just reset the previous point. Okay, and I think with that, the most important work will pretty much be done. However, when I'm clicking the mouse button right now, there is nothing being drawn, and I'm not too sure why. So give me 1 second, I'll be right back, and then I'll figure out why this isn't working right now. Okay, so it was a pretty minor mistake. So what I've done wrong is, well, not wrong, just forgot, is that when we receive the function as the argument parameter, or as the argument for the hook, you need to remember to put this inside of the dependency array. So if we don't, then the drawing will not work. But if we put this into the dependency array, because the reason we're doing that is because we are not defining it in the use effect itself, but we are receiving it from the outside. And because we're receiving it from the outside, we need to put it into a dependency array. And we should even, so if we run lint, for example, the linter should also pick up on this. So let's, oh, well, it doesn't. That is weird. Normally the linter is very good at picking up those things, but I might have disabled the no exhaustive dependencies. I'm not sure. But when you get these from outside, you want to put them into the dependency array. So whenever the reference of this function changes, then the use effect will reinitialize. So this will actually know what exactly to do. And then because we put it into the dependency array, we can run yarn dev again, start up the server, and I'm not too sure why the linter didn't pick it up. It might do if you run the build, so npm run build. But as you can see, the drawing is working just perfectly fine now. Everything is how we want it to be. So whenever we click, then the line is being drawn. And if we don't click, nothing is being drawn to the screen. No, and then one really small change we can do is the little color picker that we had. And one way to do that would be to do it yourself, which I wouldn't recommend. So that is why we are going to install a dependency for that, npm dependency. This is my original code, and it is called React Color. So we're going to copy it from here, and then stop the server for a second, npm install React Color, which is going to give us access to a bunch of color pickers on the front end. The one we are going to worry about is the Chrome picker, because I think that one works well for just, regular color picking. We can also install the types if you're working with TypeScript, and that way we can get the Chrome picker. Now, should you do this in an actual production project? I don't know, because this dependency is pretty heavy. As you can see right here, it's 142.2k zipped. At gzipped it's 38.2, so it is quite heavy, as you can see, because it's red color. So I don't know if it makes sense to use in a production setting, but right now it's gonna be just fine. We are saying Chrome picker, and this takes two arguments: the color, and then also in a second the on change. But because we are gonna have the color dynamically, we're gonna want to initialize a state, and that state is going to be, let's just call it color, set color. It's going to be a string, and let's make it black by default. So that is going to be the default value that will also be shown in the Chrome picker. Have the color, and then the on change we get in event in the on change, and that event as you can see when hovering over it, is a color result. And we're just setting the color to the event.hex because we just worry about the hex value. Okay, and if we save that, go to the browser, reload the, and restart the server, yarn dev, start the server back up. And then when the server has loaded, which should happen in a second here, as we can see, the, what is that? That's a big ass error. Well, we're not gonna worry about that for now. We can see the, maybe we should worry. Okay, so we haven't implemented the color yet. So we want the line color to be the actual color state that we have up here, or we can just have the line color and replace it with the color right here. So this is a bit redundant, but we're just gonna leave it in for now. Reload the page, and a style did not match server position well, whatever. That is not something we need to worry about. And then we can use the colors just fine. So yeah, I mean, you should probably worry about the error. I'm not gonna do it just because I just want to show you how to work with them. If you were to really publish this or put it on your portfolio, you would definitely want to worry about that error. Well, yeah, it's a pretty long one, but I think you can get it fixed. We don't need to for now though. Okay, and now one final thing we want is a clear canvas button. I think my camera went off for a second there. Because with a DSLR you can only record 20 minutes and then you gotta restart the recording. Okay, so one final thing we want is the clear button, and that's pretty easy to do. So if we go back to our hook, we would probably want it in here to have that logic abstracted away from our normal page. We're just gonna have a const clear, which is gonna be a function. And now we also want the canvas because that's what we're gonna clear, which is gonna be the canvas ref.current. And if that canvas doesn't exist, then we're gonna return. But if it does, then the context, context, which we already got before right here, is gonna be the same thing. Instead of canvas ref.current, we're just gonna say canvas though, because it's the same thing. Get context, and then that is going to be 2D again. And now if that context doesn't exist, we're going to return. And if it does exist, then we're going to say context.clear rect, and we want to clear it from here to here. I think that's what it means. And then the canvas.width, and then the canvas.height. And that is going to clear our canvas. Now this function we want to pass as well. So we can destructure it here on the page, get the clear, and then we can have a little button that just says clear canvas. That is going to be of type button for accessibility purposes and just so it's semantically correct. Then on click, what we're going to do is, actually we don't need that. We could just say clear. And now whenever, actually, let's give it a padding of 2, rounded medium. Let's give it a border black. That's gonna make our button look a bit better. And we would probably want these two inside of a div. A div that has a class name of flex column. Let's give it a gap of 10 and a padding right of 10. Get the closing tag for that div, put it here. And now we have pretty much the exact same thing as the demo project. So we can draw in multiple colors and then clear the canvas whenever we want to. Nice. And I think this is how Da Vinci drew the Mona Lisa. I think he also did it in Next.js and React. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that's how he did it. Okay, nevertheless, I really hope you enjoyed this project, because I sure did. I had a lot of fun making this. I think this is really cool. And you can expand on this, right? There are games created on this basis. Now you would probably want a WebSockets integration for that. And maybe in an upcoming video, we will actually work on that together. For now, thank you very much for watching. I really hope you enjoyed the video, found this project useful, and then I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.